A waitress is caught using the CEO's computer, but instead of getting fired, she shakes an entire tech empire. The code she wrote? It solved a problem that had stumped the company's top engineers for 8 months. Who is she? And why did she hide her identity all this time? If you love stories about talent, recognition, and people brave enough to step out of the shadows, hit like. Leave a comment if something touched you, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss more heart-stirring stories like this. If you saw a waitress sitting at the CEO's computer, fingers flying across the keyboard with strange lines of code, what would you think? Lucas Whitaker thought he was being hacked. His office sat on the 57th floor, protected by fingerprint locks and a desktop rigged with triple-layered security. And yet, when he reviewed the security footage that day, he saw a young woman in a server's uniform sitting in his chair, typing away like she owned the place. She wasn't searching for files. She didn't open any emails. She was writing code. The screen was packed with commands, the kind that would take his senior engineers weeks to draft. And some lines carried his own programming signature. Except now, they were rewritten, optimized in a way he never imagined. Arielle? That was her name. But to understand why she was there, why a waitress could code like a genius, we have to go back. Before the CEO's door creaked open. Before the pride of an empire was quietly challenged by someone no one ever noticed. Arielle had worked in Whitaker Tower for over 9 months. No one remembered exactly when she started. She arrived like smoke, quiet, weightless, invisible. Her job was to make coffee, wipe down meeting rooms, clear executive desks, and vanish before anyone could ask her name. She was young, black, small-framed, and expressionless. No one thought she had an education. No one asked, and she never said a word. But there was something in her eyes, something unreadable. As if she wasn't passive to the world, but studying it. Every person, every conversation, every fake smile plastered on the faces of executives when speaking to higher-ups. Arielle remembered it all, and she waited. That afternoon, she pushed her service cart down the hallway, just like every other day. But when she reached the CEO's office, the door was slightly ajar. A glow from the monitor spilled out into the corridor. The desktop computer was still on, unlocked. A rare mistake for Lucas Whitaker, a man known for trusting no one. Arielle paused, her hands gently gripping the cart handle. Then she stepped inside. In the silence of that office, the young waitress sat in the most powerful chair on the floor, placed her fingers on the keyboard, and began to type. Lucas Whitaker didn't believe in intuition. He believed in data, in system logs, emotionless algorithms, and error-free calculations. So when he got a security alert from the IT department on Monday morning, he didn't panic. He was just annoyed. Unusual access to the main desktop around 4:12 p.m. on Friday. No password changes, system integrity intact. We suspect a sensor glitch. A glitch? There were no glitches in Lucas's office. Everything had a reason. Even silence. He requested the security footage, access only he was authorized to have. The screen lit up. Lucas alone in his office, tie loosened, coffee half full. Then his phone rang. He stepped out in a hurry. At that exact moment, a figure moved silently down the hallway. Hair in a neat bun, gray skirt, white blouse. Lucas tilted his head. The girl didn't look at the camera. She just stood at the doorway, hesitating. Then stepped inside, quietly. Closed the door behind her. Lucas didn't blink as he watched her pull out his chair. She didn't hesitate, didn't snoop, didn't search for anything. She turned on the second monitor, opened the command line terminal, and started to code. Line by line. Clean, precise, elegant. Lucas stared at the footage, his breath quickening. He recognized a block of code, a problem his R&D team had been struggling with for the past 8 months. An algorithm to extract user behavior without violating privacy rights. That girl, the waitress whose name he didn't even know, was writing the solution, a full, working solution. Lucas leaned back in his chair as if the air had suddenly thickened. He'd met geniuses before, but none had walked into a CEO's office without flinching and left behind code that could shame an entire lab of PhDs. He rewound the video, slowed it down. She didn't glance around, didn't check for cameras. Her eyes locked on the screen, her expression steady, unshaken. At times, she even looked like she was sighing, as if fixing an old homework assignment that hadn't quite satisfied her. Lucas rested his hand against his forehead. For the first time in years, he felt unsteady. Not because he feared a data breach, but because he didn't understand, and not understanding for someone like him was dangerous. "What's her name?" he asked his assistant. "Arielle. She's been working the executive floor for over 9 months. I want to see her, now." Arielle stepped into the 57th floor conference room at the urgent summons. She didn't ask why, didn't look nervous. She simply adjusted the collar of her shirt and stood tall, as if she'd always known this day would come. Lucas was already there. Alone. No assistant, no lawyer, no witnesses. The room was spacious, yet the air felt heavy, like everything inside was holding its breath. He didn't offer her a seat. She didn't ask for one. They stood on opposite sides of the gleaming conference table, his eyes guarded, hers calm. "Do you know why you're here?" Lucas asked, voice low and measured. "Possibly," Arielle replied, meeting his gaze. "You accessed my computer. That's something that could cost you more than just a job." A beat of silence. 1 second. 2. Then she said evenly, "It wasn't access. Your system wasn't locked." Lucas raised an eyebrow. Technically true, but it sounded a lot like defiance. "Do you have any idea what kind of system you were in?" "I do." "And you still went through with it?" "Because I knew I wouldn't break it." The answer struck like an arrow straight into Lucas's pride. But instead of anger, he felt intrigued. It had been a long time since anyone spoke to him like that. No circling around, no flattery, no fear. "Where did you learn to code?" he asked. Arielle smiled, for the first time since walking in. Not a friendly smile exactly, more like the smile of someone who knew she was being tested and didn't care. "No school. I learned from the man you once called your mentor." Lucas froze. "Who?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer to the table, the ceiling light catching her cheekbones and casting a quiet strength in her cold, dark eyes. "You learned something important from him," she said, steady. "But somewhere along the way, you forgot it. Being better than someone doesn't mean you get to look down on them." Lucas opened his mouth, then stopped. The girl standing before him didn't bow, didn't apologize, didn't plead. She wasn't a problem to be dealt with. She was a question he didn't yet know how to answer. And what unsettled him most was that he wanted to. Lucas didn't sleep that night. He turned on his personal computer at home, not to work, but to re-examine the code the waitress had left behind. A few lines, typed in minutes. No file name, no comments, no trace. And yet, the more he studied it, the more unsettled he became. Not because of any risk of data leaks, but because of its unnerving perfection. He opened up the company's internal project, Chimera 2.0, a machine learning security system designed to detect user threats without invading privacy. A risky idea. It required a level of behavioral analysis far beyond any existing algorithm. Lucas and his R&D team had spent 8 months neck deep in it. Hundreds of test models, and always the same wall. How do you extract unstructured behavioral data without exposing personal information? He'd told himself they were at least 2 or 3 years away from an answer. And yet, Arielle had written exactly that core segment. Not just rewritten, reimagined it. She didn't fix the old code. She started from scratch, as if she understood the problem better than anyone on his team. Lucas sat back, resting his chin on his hand, eyes locked on the screen. Her code felt like it shared DNA with his own thinking, but cleaner, sharper, and guided by something instinctive. How could a waitress write this? Who was she? He pulled up her personnel file. Arielle Davis, no tech degrees, a string of part-time jobs, no prestigious schools, no online presence, no published work, as if she had intentionally erased her past, or never left a trail to begin with. The only theory left, industrial espionage, a planted prodigy sent by a rival company to infiltrate his system from the inside. The more Lucas thought about it, the more it made sense. Because no one could understand Chimera like that, except someone who'd helped build it. He forwarded the code to the head of security with a single instruction. Do not share this with anyone. Freeze the main project. I'll handle this personally. But just as he moved to shut down the laptop, his hand paused. There, tucked into the final lines of code, was a lone comment. Some limits only exist in other people's minds. Lucas blinked. This wasn't just raw talent. This was a statement. A challenge. Reminder? He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Arielle Davis wasn't a spy. She was something much harder to define. And Lucas Whitaker, A man who'd built his empire on absolute control was starting to lose his grip in the very place he thought he ruled. Lucas Whitaker wasn't the kind of man who let instincts take the wheel. But this time, he let the unease guide him. He sat alone in his private office at dawn, before his assistant arrived, before the building's automatic lights even turned on. Just him, a cup of black espresso, and the internal employee database glowing on the screen. Her name, Arielle Davis. At a glance, her file was almost perfectly unremarkable. No prestigious schools, no programming certifications. No LinkedIn, no GitHub. Everything about her was clean, too clean. He submitted a request for extended records from HR. They hesitated, but the name Whitaker still carried absolute authority. An hour later, he received the original intake file. Every document she'd submitted when she first applied. Birth certificate, residential history, employment background. Everything looked legitimate. Except one thing. A scanned, faded copy of an old birth certificate, yellowed with age. Near the bottom, handwritten in almost invisible ink, father's name, Charles B. Lucas shot upright in his chair. Charles B. Charles Bennett? No, it couldn't be. Charles Bennett, the late tech tycoon, visionary investor, founder of Bennett Capital, mentor, and the very first backer of Whitaker Tech back in 2009. Lucas remembered the day he died. 4 years ago, a sudden cardiac arrest while vacationing in Switzerland. The press had covered it nonstop. His estate passed legally and neatly to his acknowledged son, Brandon Bennett, who now ran the fund. No one had ever mentioned a daughter. But the documents didn't lie. Lucas traced old tax filings, residential records, local scholarship applications. And every breadcrumb pointed to one undeniable conclusion. Arielle Davis was Charles Bennett's illegitimate daughter. Lucas rose from his chair and walked to the window, staring out at the city just beginning to stir. The morning light bounced off the mirrored towers like a silent storm brewing inside him. A young black woman, no pedigree, no inheritance, no seat at the table, and the daughter of the man who once taught Lucas his very first line of code. Never underestimate someone just because they weren't given a seat next to you. Lucas stood frozen, that memory echoing in his ears. Arielle's unwavering gaze, that sharp line, that flawless code, that fire in her eyes. It was like watching a young Charles come back to life. Except for one difference. She wasn't asking for power. She was asking to be seen. And somehow, to Lucas, that was more terrifying than any inheritance lawsuit ever could be. Lucas had Arielle called up to his office again. But this time, he didn't sit at the head of the table like a powerful CEO. He stood leaning against the bookshelf, hands clasped, eyes searching, as if weighing something between logic and conscience. Arielle entered, silent as always. She didn't ask why she'd been summoned. She just stood there, calm, composed, but far from passive. Lucas spoke first, his voice measured, every word like a stone carefully placed on still water. Charles Bennett, was he your father? Arielle didn't flinch, didn't deflect. She simply looked at him like someone who had waited a long time to finally hear the right question. Yes, though he never once called me his daughter. Lucas gave a small nod, eyes never leaving hers. And your mother? Julia Davis. She was Charles's personal assistant for 6 years. They loved each other, quietly. My mother never asked him to leave his wife, never demanded anything public. She asked for just one thing, to keep me. Lucas felt his throat go dry. Julia Davis. He remembered now, a quiet, capable woman who used to accompany Charles to various events. The media had once speculated, but no one ever confirmed anything. And when Charles died, Julia disappeared from the tech world like she'd never existed. My mother taught me how to code, Arielle continued. Not like a subject in school, but like a language, a way to exist, to observe, to read what people try to hide between the lines. Lucas said nothing. He could see Charles in her eyes, not in appearance, but in the way she stood, not begging, not accusing, just there. Proud, silent. What do you want, Arielle? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head gently. I don't want anything from Charles. No will, no name, no inheritance. Lucas narrowed his eyes. Then what about me? What do you want from me? Arielle lowered her gaze for a moment, then looked back up, steady. You were mentored by him, trusted by him, shaped by him. I want to know if someone like you can look at someone like me and see more than where I came from, more than my skin, more than this server's uniform. Silence. A long, heavy silence. Lucas turned away and took a few steps, like he needed space just to breathe. Inside him, every neatly labeled box of logic had begun to collapse. She wasn't asking for validation. She was testing him, in the hardest way possible, with her presence. And Lucas understood. If he let her walk away, he would lose the only thing Charles Bennett had truly left behind. Not money, not legacy, but a genius the world had never properly seen. "I have something," Lucas said, his gaze no longer filled with suspicion, but with something deeper, almost evaluative. "A problem, a system no one's been able to crack." Arielle didn't respond. She only tilted her head slightly, as if hearing a familiar song playing from a distant room. "We call it Daedalus," Lucas continued, "an AI core still in development, with a singular objective, to learn how to say no. There are thousands of AIs that can suggest, none that know when to refuse." Arielle furrowed her brow, not in confusion but in curiosity. Lucas watched her as if trying to pierce the quiet armor she wore so well. "We've built the first 3 layers, but the fourth, the concept of moral flexibility in gray scenarios, has us stuck. Every version we've tried is either too rigid or too easily manipulated." He reached into his blazer and pulled out a small USB drive, setting it on the table. "All the data's here. You've got 1 week." Arielle raised an eyebrow, the first flicker of surprise, when Lucas called her you instead of miss. It wasn't intimacy, it was recognition. She stepped forward, picked up the drive. No questions, no thank you, just a small, firm nod. "And if I fail?" she asked, eyes locked on his. Lucas smiled, his first since the day they met. "Then I'll know I'm just an old skeptic, still worth saving." For the entire week that followed, Arielle vanished from the 57th floor. No service cart, no coffee, no cleaning. But the internal system registered a new IP accessing the sandbox server, a user ID that didn't belong to any current employee, yet every access was legitimate, authorized, and advancing. Lucas monitored every step. Each log entry told a story. Arielle wasn't just analyzing logic. She was dismantling and rebuilding Daedalus from the inside. Redefining how it processed ethical conflict, how it interpreted human silence. On the 6th day, the system returned a simple message: Daedalus V4.0 active, mode, ethical instinct. Lucas shot up from his chair. No bells, no fanfare, no formal announcement, just one email sitting in his inbox. Subject: "It's not that I needed to prove anything. It's that I needed to know whether I truly exist in this world, or if I'm just another shadow people choose not to see." Arielle Lucas closed his laptop. He no longer saw her as a challenge. She was a reckoning. The door to the 57th floor office opened once more, but this time, not to reprimand Arielle, but to invite her to sit. Lucas offered her a position on the internal engineering team as a part-time collaborator. No official listing, no company email, no profile photo. A shadow role, yet with full access to the Daedalus project and a personal access card issued to no one else. Arielle didn't ask why. She simply nodded. She still worked mornings as a service staff, still pushed the coffee cart down the hallway, still dusted executive desks as usual. But in the afternoons, after the administrative staff had left, she sat at a small desk in the auxiliary lab on the 45th floor, headphones on, black screen glowing with white lines of code that flowed like a river of data straight from her mind. Lucas came by every day, pretending to check equipment, but really just to watch her work. He didn't say much. Occasionally, he'd rest a hand on the back of her chair, glance at the unfolding code, and quietly nod. Once, he murmured, "You type just like Charles did when he was young." Arielle didn't turn around, but after a pause, she replied softly, "You knew what he was like when he was young. I never did." Her voice held no blame, just sadness, quiet and deep. Lucas said nothing for a very long time. The conversation started with small things. He asked her what programming language she liked most. She shot back, "Do you prefer teaching by example or by letting people crash?" He chuckled. "I used to like watching people stumble. Now, I'm learning how to draw them a detour instead." One afternoon, while they were debugging the emotional feedback interface for Daedalus, Arielle said quietly, "I used to think successful people never noticed those without a name on the conference room door." Lucas looked up from the screen. "You know, most people in that room used to think the exact same thing." She didn't smile, but something in her eyes softened. He was beginning to see. She wasn't just brilliant. She was someone who had carried her hurt like code, compressed, logical, silently sharp. and she was starting to see him, beneath the cold CEO armor, as a man who once had fire, once broke rules, once dreamed, and was slowly being devoured by the very system he built. A week later, in a closed-door meeting with the engineering leads, Lucas said, "We have a new collaborator. Part-time. Don't ask where she came from. Just listen when she speaks." The room fell quiet. Arielle walked in. No uniform, no cart, just herself, with bright eyes, a laptop in hand, and a posture that spoke of never needing to bow again. A second chance. Not given, but built by her own hands. That afternoon, while Arielle was working in the lab on the 45th floor, Lucas showed up unannounced. He wasn't wearing a suit, just a rolled-up shirt and a look that carried something unspoken. In his hand was an old envelope, the paper yellowed, its edges slightly torn. No name on the front, just a handwritten line. "If one day she comes back." He placed it on the table in front of Arielle. "It's from Charles," Lucas said softly. "I found it in his private safe last week when visiting Brandon about Daedalus. Maybe he never had the courage to send it." Arielle didn't rush to open it. Her hand froze for a long moment above the envelope. She looked at it like she was staring at a door that had stayed shut her whole childhood, and now she could finally touch the handle, though she wasn't sure if she wanted to step through. Finally, she opened it. Inside was a single page, handwritten. But every word, every line, felt like a knock on the armor she'd built around her heart all those years. "Arielle, I'm sorry I never had the courage to call you my daughter. I was a coward. I let fear hurt the one person I always wished I could claim as my own. You have your mother's eyes, and a mind, sharper than mine ever was. I used to think staying silent would protect you, but the older I got, the more I realized the cruelest thing isn't saying no. It's not being there at all. If you're reading this, it means you've found your own way, and I hope you never let the past stop you from fully living the present. I'm proud of you, even if I never got to say it out loud." Arielle folded the letter. She didn't cry, but her chest rose ever so slightly, like someone had just breathed a soft wind into a place she'd thought had long turned to stone. Lucas didn't say anything. He just stood there, quiet. Finally, Arielle looked up. "When did he write that?" Lucas shook his head. "I'm guessing not long before he passed. Maybe he knew he didn't have much time left." She stared into the space in front of her, then gave a small nod. "He never said it, but I always hoped." Lucas hesitated, then spoke, gently, as if afraid to disturb something fragile. "And he's not the only one who's proud of you." Arielle turned to him, meeting his eyes. No words followed. But in that moment, the space between them no longer held titles, skin color, or history. Just a father who was gone, a daughter who had finally been seen, and a man, once a cold, commanding CEO, now learning how to stand beside someone without hiding his softness. That morning, the 57th floor was unusually quiet. Lucas Whitaker stood in front of the mirror in the dressing room, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. No suit today. He wouldn't be on stage. Someone else would. And for the first time in his 20-year career, he felt proud. Not for what he had done, but for who he had chosen to believe in. Downstairs, the auditorium was packed. Major tech journalists filled the seats. Rumors about a decision-making AI platform had leaked a week earlier, and today, Whitaker Tech would officially unveil Daedalus v4.0. But instead of Lucas, as in previous years, the person introduced on stage was a name no one had heard before. Arielle Davis, lead ethical intelligence architect. She stepped onto the stage slowly, calmly, her hair neatly tied back. No designer clothes, no flashy startup style. Just a simple black dress and eyes that seemed to hold an entire universe of data. After a few seconds of silence, she began. Some people are remembered for great inventions, others for numbers and charts, but there are also those who just hope to be remembered for standing up when no one thought they belonged here at all. The entire auditorium fell silent. Arielle continued. No flashy slides, no backstory. She went straight to the heart of it. The danger of AI isn't in what it can do, but in the fact that no one is asking whether it should. She explained how Daedalus learns from cultural, ethical, and situational data to understand that saying no isn't a failure, but a sign of awareness. And most importantly, no algorithm will ever be smarter than a human who knows when to ask the right question. Her speech ended in a long standing ovation. After the ceremony, Lucas found Arielle standing alone on the rooftop balcony. The wind was gentle. She had taken off her shoes, holding a glass of iced tea, eyes staring into the distance. "You know what they'll write about you tomorrow?" he asked, stepping beside her. Arielle smiled. "Something like, 'Mysterious genius steps out of the shadows of tech'?" Lucas laughed. Or, "Formerly overlooked waitress now reshaping the future of ethical AI." She turned to him, her gaze softening. "I don't need them to remember my name. I just need someone out there to stop thinking they have to stay silent their whole life to be accepted." Lucas nodded. "I'll remember." Arielle looked at him, just for a second, then said quietly, "Thank you for seeing me." And with that, she stepped down from the balcony and into the crowd gathering around her. No longer the girl pushing a coffee cart. No longer the hidden name. But someone who would be remembered, not because she was once forgotten, but because she chose to speak up when the world most needed to listen.